Sorry this took so long. If you read JPEG's posts, or Kaiast, or whatever you want to call them, we've had some difficulties with the format and everything, and midway through me changing up your animation elemental, we decided that we're going to do a different approach, and we're going to just look through the video and edit it that way. It's a lot faster, and it's probably easier to do that rather than just animating everything for you, because doing that probably won't help you learn much, if I'm being honest. But, yeah, let's get right into it. Okay, for this first part where Metal Sonic sends out that energy ball, rather than having the screen going white and then the 4 other ones appear, it would have looked a lot better if you had them split from the single energy ball in the center, and I actually reanimated that bit. Also, when you're trying to show something moving far away, or moving further and further and further, your eyes, you don't see them perfectly clear, it turns into a blurry figure. This cut is nice, but I feel like a lot of effects are missing. Like Sonic's running, but there's no dust being kicked up or anything. You know, like a repeated run dust effect, something like that. And the energy balls, I think you missed out on making them really powerful, like something he would want to avoid constantly. Because what you could have done is you could have added an explosion on the left side of the camera where the energy balls actually went. That way, it gives Sonic more reason to actually want to dodge them, because even if he got hit by them, we don't know what would happen, but seeing them being that destructive would help us understand how much damage they could do to him. This punch goes by way too fast. Before I decided to do this VOD in a different way, I reanimated this whole part because the punch itself lacked impact, and it just happens. That's it. What I did instead was I gave people enough time to actually see Sonic preparing to punch Metal Sonic, while also not making it super long and breaking the flow. As for Metal Sonic flying through the objects, when I looked at the FLA I was pretty confused. Metal Sonic just turns into a blue dot and flew through 2 really oversized objects. When I reanimated this, I had an actual sprite of Metal Sonic spinning on some speed lines because I couldn't tell how far he went since the map itself is really plain with no real landmarks, for lack of a better word. This at least gets the point across that he's going somewhere far. The sounds here are pretty bad. The punch sounded so weak. If you're going to do something like that, you'll want to stack different sounds together. That metal clang was a good start, but you definitely need more than that if you want to sell it as a hard punch. The only real issue I have here are the physics. When Sonic starts to fall down, he drops like a brick. Adding a few more frames of him easing into that wouldn't hurt. Also, the frames of him coming up are really choppy. Double framing is fine, but not in this case. Another thing that I had changed was instead of having Sonic do nothing as Metal Sonic gets ready to grab him, I had Sonic attempt to move away, but fail. In your version, he just moves into his grab, if that makes any sense. The kick, knee, punch... I'm sorry you had to use this sheet. The attack that Metal Sonic did felt pretty nice. I would have just added a few more frames of his done and you're good. Sounds in this part are okay, except for the attack that Metal Sonic does after grabbing Sonic. It sounded so crusty, low quality. You're better off using a different sound from Zack's sound kit, assuming that's what you're using. The air combo here is really iffy. If Metal Sonic is able to propel himself using those flames, why would he bother waiting in between each attack? I'd also change the distance they fly in the air, since it seems like they didn't even go that high up at all. Physics when Sonic bounced off the ground are really weird too, and I noticed that wasn't even a nested symbol. You can do that with either frame by frame or twins. It doesn't matter as long as it's consistent. The basic idea is that you tween, or frame by frame, something moving up and down in a symbol. Make sure the easing is correct, 100 going up, negative 100 going down, and then back out of the symbol and move it across the stage. Very simple. Moving on though, the whole Metal Sonic flying bit felt really choppy. I said it before, but there's a time and place for double framing, and once again, this wasn't it. But the impact for Metal Sonic flying into Sonic was really nice. I'd probably use a different hit spark there, but other than that, it was really good. Now this part was really good. Just a few things I need to point out though. I know I haven't talked much about effects throughout this entire VOD, but there's just nothing here when Sonic's being slammed into the ground. If maybe there was some dust or cracks in the ground, it would have been a lot better. Other than that though, this part was great. I'm pretty okay with this part as well. It's not animated bad, effects and camming are fine, but the only real problem I have are the placements of the cuts. All I did was move Metal Sonic's cut to the front and everything flows together so much better. When you're animating something like this, think about how many times you'll be cutting the camera to a different position and ask yourself, is this necessary? This looks exactly like what the wind did in his OMM. It's not even that it's animated bad, it just seems like that perspective of Sonic charging was thrown in there simply because everybody's doing perspectives, so I have to do it too. You don't. If it doesn't fit, don't try and make it fit. Sonic doing his spin dash actually made my ears ring the first time I watched this, and the hit sound effect that followed wasn't very good either. That metal sound you used previously would have worked here on top of another punch from Zach's sound kit. Okay, 1, this is too fast. I had to replay it a few times to see Sonic's attack, but my main issue here is the background shifting. I'm not sure if you were going for manual parallaxing, or you just messed up the placement of the frames in the background, but this actually bothered me a lot while going through the animation. I couldn't even see Metal Sonic dash up to Sonic without pausing it. Anyways, the combo Sonic does is okay except for the last punch. Why did you have him swing down when Sonic had just kicked Metal Sonic up? It made very little sense, not to mention the physics were really off here. Also, I'd straight up get rid of that final kick Sonic does before it goes into that top-down view if I were you. The gap between the punch and the final kick is too much and honestly kills the flow. Speaking of, the top-down perspective seemed pretty unnecessary to me as well, not to mention that it's also animated in a really weird way. When Sonic kicks Metal Sonic into the air, you show him flying off the screen really fast. If we were shown a top-down view, I'm pretty sure we would see him flying a lot further in the air, since it seems like he didn't actually go anywhere. Also, if he's falling, why is he so high in the air when Sonic comes down with that dropkick? As for the dropkick, the main issue here is the physics and the camming. The physics are the same as before, he drops down like a brick, there's literally no easing to any of it. Metal Sonic's landing is really weird as well. You could have used this pose instead. The issue with the camming here is a point I've already made. It's just way too zoomed out and not really focused on anything in particular. You didn't even have to show us the whole stage to show that Metal Sonic flew off. You could have just cut immediately to him bouncing on the ground and that would have been good enough. Sonic comes in way too fast here. I'd probably make that around 4 frames instead of 2. The physics are off here as well. Sonic only starts to move to the right while he's falling. He barely moves during his ascent. The impact is fine, but I don't really understand why you had Sonic change his pose midway and Metal Sonic didn't. The camming was strange. It was moving in a circle rather than the crazy camera shake I know you're trying to go for, which is pretty simple really. First, you figure out what your camera is going to follow. Next, you make it tween. You can add easing, it just depends on what you're doing. Then on every other frame, 1, 3, 5, shake the camera. I usually use my mouse and just drag it off into a really far direction for the first frame, and then the next frame to the camera calming down. Boom. The sound effect for the kick was pretty weak. Once again, stack your sounds. I've shown you how much that can help. And now for the ending. For one, it's copying someone else, who copied it from someone else. It's a pretty boring ending when you consider that. But I'll focus on the execution, which is just not great. So, as Sonic is flying through the sky, he stays completely unblurred. It's weird, since I've seen you actually blur things the further they get in this animation, but the one time you don't do it is for the ending. Same thing in the next cut, Sonic is coming in, but he still isn't blurred. The background and the dust are, but he isn't. Also, where's Metal Sonic? I'm not sure why you have these speed lines on top of the other ones. It's pretty distracting if anything. The kick was too fast for me to register anything, so he goes into his pre-kick pose on the very last frame of him dashing through the air, but the camera isn't even focused on anything, so it's really hard to see that. Then within the next few frames, he kicks Metal Sonic, who we couldn't even see up until now. Don't you think it would have been a better idea to show Metal Sonic in the air still, rather than just showing us Sonic coming down with a kick and then suddenly Metal Sonic is there? This animation had its moments, but I feel like it really failed when it came down to execution, physics, sounds, and camming. Your use of perspectives is really hit or miss since, like I said, it seems like you're just throwing them in just because everybody else does them. I do hope the points I've made help you in some way, and if anything confused you, don't hesitate to ask me. Say it!